Welcome back. The start of the year has seen flooding in South Africa, and of course it's also fire season. Well, more roads in the vicinity of Kleinmond in the Overberg in the Western Cape have been closed due to a fire that ignited on Saturday. The Overstrand Municipality says the blaze is still out of control in windy conditions and that the R43 has now been closed due to those conditions and poor visibility. For more on this, we're now joined by Trevor Abrahams, Managing Director at Working on Fire. Mr. Abrahams, thank you for being with us. What is the situation right now?
Good evening, Francis. Yes, it is the Southern Cape's and Western Cape's fire season at the moment. Unfortunately, this fire is still active. It's not been contained as yet. It's been burning quite an extensive area. Some 4,000 hectares have already been recorded as being damaged. Right now, the primary focus is preventing the spread into the Kleinmond community.
The reports thus far suggest that there have been no deaths, some evacuations, but not many properties lost. There was a report of one, but it was not inhabited. What's the situation?
That is quite correct. We're very fortunate. We haven't had any property lost, and certainly no injuries even, let alone any fatalities from this fire. Earlier today, it was in a very, very strong windy condition, up to 52 knot gusts. Kilometer per hour gusts. And of course, we've been using, as you can see from the images, the helicopters to drop water, and also 169 of the Working on Fire ground crew, as well as an additional 116 personnel from other municipalities that have been fighting this fire. So fortunately, our losses in terms of lives, injuries, and property has been very limited at this stage. And we're also fortunate that it's become cooler. It's become overcast and the wind has died down a bit. So right now we're trying to take the gap in the weather conditions to try and secure this fire so we can at least declare it contained.
All right, and you're hoping to do that overnight?
Well, it will be going all around the clock. I mean, unfortunately, fires don't knock off at any time in the day. Well, so we would obviously be combating, and this has been a 24-hour operation since Saturday when this fire broke out.
So I'm glad you brought that up because the team's working since Saturday. People must be exhausted.
Yes, I mean, it's quite a tiring job. Remember, it's in very hot conditions, very windy conditions up on mountain slopes. But we do have a process of rotating teams so that we do make sure that people do not succumb to exhaustion. But it is a very tiring enterprise to combat this. And it's under direction, as you see, Reinhard Geldernes, who's the incident commander, and Lester, who's taking over now for the evening shift, will also be commanding the incident center there that will be managing these fires.
Are residential areas threatened at all? We know these big roads, the R44, is affected.
Well, the closest areas obviously Kleinmond and then also the Amanus areas. And, the spread of this type of fire is largely wind dependent. And as I've indicated, we have had a bit of a calming of the wind, which allows better control measures to put in place, including backburns, where we actually burn an area ahead of where the fire can spread, so we deprive it of fuel. We are obviously backed up by, the helicopters that we have to also cool the operation. And the number of pump vehicles and firefighting vehicles on the scene, if the weather allows, I think we can get control of this before it actually threatens the communities.
Yeah, and the wind, I mean, we saw when Parliament was on fire and then everything seemed to be under control, there were flare-ups and a raging fire because the wind changed direction. So I guess we're all learning how volatile things are because the wind can change direction.
Yeah, the structural firefight is a little bit difficult because, you have burning within a building structure, some which might not have been detected. But when it comes to these wildland fires, one of the big determinants obviously is the wind, but also the kind of vegetation. And, part of those that, in fact, set off this fire were the alien invasives that were in this area. And that burns much more vigorously and much more dramatically than our local vegetation. And I think that's creating part of the problems we've seen.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up too, because reportedly thousands of hectares of vegetation has been lost, and we know there should be fire breaks. I don't know, are there things that should have been in place, checking on the indigenous versus non-indigenous plantation, for example, or the fire breaks that should have been in place that aren't or weren't?
Yeah, I think first we need to understand that this kind of vegetation, the fynbos biome, is fire dependent. So it does need fire, it does thrive on the fire to happen from time to time. I think what we found over the years is with the alien invasives in the area, you have a much more dramatic challenge in terms of fire spread, etc. And you're absolutely right. I mean, landowners are required to construct fire breaks on their perimeters to try and limit the spread. But the truth be told, in weather conditions where you have 52 kilometer per hour gusts, those embers are going to spread no matter how good your fire breaks are.
Yeah. Finally, working on fire, I think it's good to highlight what you do. So you're a job creation program funded by government. You recruit young people and give them skills to fight fires, and then the teams are out there. How's it working? What is the capacity, the level of skill generally in South Africa when it comes to fighting fires?
I think that's a very good point. I think, we really need to salute these young people, men and women. 30% of our firefighters are women. We've got some 5,000 firefighters around the country that are funded by the government's expanded public work program through the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. And we've been doing this for the last 18 years. And we train basically unemployed youth to become active and professional wildland firefighters, so much so that we get invited overseas. I think you might recall in September, we returned from Canada, which was the fourth deployment of 109 of our team members who went out there to assist Manitoba with their fires. So I think we're a world-renowned and accepted entity in the wildland fire business, and our aerial resources are also second to none. So, this is one of the success stories of government that we don't always fully recognize, that we've created an employment creation project which provides this service. And equally important, many of these young people go on to careers beyond working on fire, where they use the skills and the kind of exposure to the world of work to actually obtain, permanent employment in the police force, in SANDF, in conservation agencies, in municipalities, and even in the private sector, besides some of them even starting entrepreneurship projects.
All right, well, thank you for the work you do and they do, and we'll follow that fire is still raging, although, like he says, the wind has died down a little bit, so hopefully that situation remains the same. Trevor Abrahams, Managing Director at Working on Fire.